And for the number of viewers that are coming in through the USA Table Tennis website, you can go to the World Junior Championships link off the homepage and see a number of these matches that these young women played in India, as well as interviews with the ITTF's Ian Marshall. You have a chance to listen to Prachi share her views on how she thought the tournament went.
And right off the bat, that's what you want to look for, I think, during this match, is how often can Prachi catch Lily in these backhand-to-backhand exchanges. 2 points in a row now for 2 straight points to open the match.
So Han, let me have you put kind of your coach's cap on her, more even from a player's perspective. You've upset a better player. Psychologically going into that second matchup, are you thinking it's your match to lose? Or are you thinking you've got to step it up? Do you have to do something outside the norm? Do you have to change tactics? What's going on through your mind when you have to play that person the second time after you've upset them the first?
I think so much of it depends on the history beyond even just that one match. If you really had a losing streak against that player before that one upset, I think you're going into it still thinking that you need to do a lot to win the match, especially if the first match wasn't just a complete blowout, as opposed to if you actually have done really well against them before and have finally just broken through. I think that's a little bit of a different story. I think you'd feel a little bit more confident, but I think there's so much context going on there that it's difficult to give a general answer.
And clearly with Prachi coming back, that just shows her determination and willingness not to give up when she was trailing in that fifth and final game, which maybe Lily's thinking, maybe I let my guard down a little bit in the final game, thinking that I might have been able to kind of coast it through. And that's one part of the game that their third teammate, Ariel Shing, has always been so strong at, is regardless of the score, just continuing to go out and fight till the very end. And that's become a norm on our junior girls side, is that no lead is safe, especially in the fifth game, because everyone's going to continue to fight that final point. Gosh, it really looks like Prachi has added another dimension to her over-the-table game with a lot more topspin on the ball, and her forehand's so active. She's not just putting it on the table, but she's doing something with it.
So much of Lily's success in this match is going to be dependent on the serve and serve receive, the first 3 balls of every point. She just puts it on the table and allows Prachi to dictate the placement of the first ball. She's going to be in trouble, but if she can get into Prachi's middle or get out wide to Prachi's forehand, she's going to have success. So being aggressive without overplaying is such a useful skill to have with the serve and serve receive.
And Han, with both these players having very strong forehands, the one thing that you can kind of look at a little bit is their leg strength, and that's one thing I noticed, that Lily coming into this tournament, her legs look so much stronger than they were last year. I think that's going to give her a slight advantage once they get into forehand to forehand kind of counter blows, is that she can put a little bit more spin on her ball. But I mean, really credit Prachi, just up at the table, there's no fear. She has no hesitation dealing with Lily's fast backhand play.
Prachi likes to go backhand to backhand and then transition into the forehand counter over the table.
It seems like her forehand still is primarily done with her upper body. She doesn't play as much heavy topspin, where Lily, with her misdirections on her forehand sides, seems to put a little bit more spin on the ball, giving her some more options.
Yeah.
It's nice to see Lily giving herself a little bit of self-encouragement after the point, really showing a lot of respect for Prachi. Not that she's trying to create any type of unsportsmanlike behavior, but she knows that every point's important. So just a small little shot after the point.
I think Lily's still going to be pretty confident going into this match, considering that she really had a pretty commanding lead in the fifth game, the previous meeting. Just making sure she's focused on every point.
It's almost like they're in a little bit of a psychological battle right now, where Lily wants to reestablish that she's the stronger player. by just keeping the pressure on. Not a good idea to try to push short a heavy side topspin serve. It got away.
Seems like Prachi's just taking a little bit more risk during the rally than Lily is willing to take at this point. Just flattening out everything a little bit more.
Lily is playing quite a bit different than we saw her in doubles, where she had to focus more on placement. An excellent forehand down the line by Prachi. Well, it looked like she was a little bit off balance. She was in control of making that forehand attack. But again, we can see the closeness and the tightness of this matchup with 10-9 first game with Lily Zhang of the ICC. Taking game number one off of a very strong forehand flip, but one flip isn't going to be enough when you're playing against Lily. Got to be ready to play 2 or 3 shots on every single rally.
Yeah, Prachi's now made a few flips cross court. I think Lily's going to start keying in on that. She can continue to serve that ball and letting Prachi open up off of it as long as she knows where the ball is going to be going for the most part.
And if you're going to flip that hard, it's probably going cross court, because that's where you've got greater table length and the angle, especially as you're turning and stepping in under the table. So the server has a slight advantage knowing that it's going to come cross court. They can see the ball longer, and then they should, if they don't get too close to the ball, have the ability to loop it, whether it's down the line or cross court or even back to the player's middle. So Prachi's got to watch out by not overhitting or going for too much, because it is a small trap that Lily is creating by not serving necessarily high, but serving to a position where Prachi can step in quickly and go for the strong return. I think at our junior levels, we see too many of our kids going for the flip kill and not the flip placement. Anyone can hit the ball hard, but to hit to the right spot with the right amount of pace takes a lot of experience.
I remember Todd Swearis, one of our Olympians, always saying that when he flips, he likes to try to flip outside the lines of the table, which not enough players try to do. Of course, sometimes you're going to place the ball in the elbow and in the middle, but he said that was always one skill that he tried to develop. That was something rare among the top players in the U.S.
I think that knowing Todd as well, during his Olympic career, Coach Li Zhenxi, who's at World Champions Table Tennis Academy, would even have in warm-up the forehand-to-forehand play, which you think is so inconsequential. He would always say during warm-up, make sure you're hitting the balls outside the end line. So forehand-to-forehand off the side of the table on the forehand, and that's what he did as a player, as a pips-out hitter. He had to control those angles to the kind of the nth degree, and Todd took that one step further on serve return. And Todd was probably best known for his serve return. That's the one thing that he knew no matter who he played with, he could at least be even or probably have a slight advantage. So again, all that great knowledge and information is being passed on to that next generation of players that we have, and Prachi is the recipient of that so far.
Lily jumping out to a commanding lead in the second game, 5-1. But you saw in that last service turn, Prachi realizing that sort of trap we were talking about, just broke out of it, just slid the ball down the line, didn't have to be too strong, but just moved Lily out of that forehand corner.
We know that there's going to be a bit of streakiness in this match because they will get into a little bit of the pattern play in the diagonal direction especially. But Prachi needs to make sure she's just not going for power, even if she makes a strong shot, that the next ball she might need to move a couple inches left or a couple inches right, because Lily is so strong on the wings.
Lily's just losing focus for a couple points here. There's a high service that she missed. Now is completely whiffing on the backhand and looking a little bit frustrated.
That again, that's something as a top player you need to be able to, whether the score is 1-1 or 5-1, keep the exact same intensity, and that kind of the priority of making sure that the next point is the most important and not getting into a little bit of a daze of, okay, well, I've got this under control. 11-point games are too short to think that anything is safe.
It's very good placement from Lily on the second ball. She knows that Prachi wants to get into that exchange, and she knows Prachi's footwork breaks down a little bit towards the elbow in the middle.
I think also when Lily's going her backhand kind of directly into Prachi's forehand, they get 2 or 3 exchanges that way. Prachi has to make so much of a bigger stroke on the forehand. If she doesn't have enough time, that can really handcuff her a bit.
And that goes back to what you were saying with Prachi's forehand stroke being more of the upper body and not really as much rotation in the waist area and the hips. So that motion is always going to be a little bit loopier, a little bit longer to develop. With those players, you can catch them in the middle. There, Prachi just managed to recover and caught Lily by surprise.
But I think with Lily's strong topspin on her backhand side, she forces the opponent to add even more spin to the forehand counterattack. And again, going down the line is a shorter angle. So Lily has more tools in her box of trick, but Prachi is so strong with her execution right now. She's really making good decisions, but she's going to need to change things up to get back into this match. Now that was a bad mistake there by Prachi, just reaching for the ball.
She needs to stay patient and aggressive at the same time, which is always very difficult. Now Lily with 3 game points to take 2-0 lead. A little bit lucky, but again, great placement from Lily. Taking the second game, 11-7. She has a 2-0 lead over Prachi Jha, but ICC is still 2 matches to 1 behind in the team match against World Champions Table Tennis Academy. Sean, one of the things I've noticed watching a lot of these junior girls matches is just the really impressive growth in the women's game in the US over the past 10 years, especially when it comes to services. It used to just be sort of vanilla serves coming from mostly American players. You had some imports, if you will, from China, from other countries, of course, like Yasna Rather. When she came, she brought some really innovative serves, but for the most part, our junior players were serving very vanilla,
kind of just putting
serves,
the ball
right,
into play.
But now, watching, for example, Prachi Jha's services are really something different, and they really have their own sort of distinctiveness.
Right, and then while it's not the exact same in singles and doubles, just the willingness of world champions to be aggressive on the serve against ICC in the pivotal 5th game to mix it up and go long. Now, granted, Ishana's a young and up-and-coming player, and that's a standard good tactic to put pressure on them. But yeah, mixing it up.
But watching some of those serves from Prachi, I mean, those were mean serves. Some of those had significant amount of kick on the serve, and Ishana was just not able to get the timing right.
Right. The depth on it, the spin on it, and the variation. So this isn't as unexpected to see Lily come out strong, because anytime a higher ranked player loses, it sends a wake-up call, and usually it forces the better player to start right from the beginning.
It's extra motivation as well.
Right, you want to send a message. You want to say that, you know what, you beat me, I grant you that, but you're not going to beat me 2 times in a row. So I just love the approach and the mindset that Prachi has had. I've really seen her take that step up and become such a valuable member to the junior team while she's still at such a young age.
It's a Great counter attack over the table. And this game I think is critical for Lily. She's come out so strong, taking a 2-0 lead, commanding lead. To lose focus in this game would really hurt. But it looks like she's really in control over the table, as I said, really being aggressive early in the point.
Just forcing the action and making Prachi realize that while Prachi might be able to battle or beat Lily's B game, if Lily's playing her A game, Prachi doesn't have really the defensive positioning to withstand that. And I think that's probably how she was able to create that first upset in the youth singles, was that Lily had a lead. And anytime you have a lead, it's easy to go into that passive mode. And it's tough to sometimes get it back. So right now, Lily's leaving nothing to chance, and she's just coming out really forcing every single point to get into a forehand, heavy topspin, backhand, quick off the bounce type of rally, where Prachi can keep the ball and play it with that, but she just can't get the upper hand, as if Lily's doing blocking the whole time.
And now Stefan Fett is taking the timeout. Doesn't like what he's seeing so far this game.
Right, and it's a defensive timeout. I mean, if you're trailing 2-0 in games and 4-1 in the points, you're just hoping that somehow you can break the rhythm. But I have a feeling Lily's going to be just as aggressive and placing that ball even better.
And sometimes with those timeouts, it's not even about tactics so much anymore. You've played the same opponent once before in the tournament. You've studied the opponent probably months in advance. You've got the tactics down. You won the first match with those tactics. A lot of time, sometimes the defensive timeout is even just to break the opponent's rhythm.
One other funny element that maybe a U.S. player might not notice is Prachi has been watching Lily play international opponents for the last 5 days. And she's been able to see some of the areas where Lily had some issues. Now, of course, Lily's had a chance to see Prachi play as well, but it's always easier for the lower player to gain more, to see how do you beat a Lily Zhang. And by seeing what the Chinese did, I'm sure that gave her a little more confidence in the youth singles. But now Lily, as we've seen, has really stepped it up.
She's adjusted. She's pinned Prachi time after time into that middle that we were talking about, and Prachi's footwork has been a little bit lacking as the match has gone on.
Tend to be a little bit more aggressive with her forehand versus setting up the point.
Look at that, just point after point after point. It's the same tactic.
See,
she hasn't gone away
Prachi
from
almost
it.
taking that swing before she's gotten into position, and that's really cost her.
She knows what shot she wants to hit. It's the right shot, but instead of moving her feet first and reaching with her feet, she's reaching with the arms. And you'll see that from players who want to play backhand to backhand and don't want to play as aggressively with the forehand unless it's in that power pocket. You'll see that a lot.
So from Lily's standpoint in this match, and again, Prachi played that ball on her forehand, but she didn't have enough distance between her and the ball to really get the shoulders into it. Lily's just put constant pressure, and that's how matches in the past when these two have played. Lily's just started strong. And
eight match points. Very difficult to come back from something like this. And the last point is kind of just a microcosm of that whole game.
Right.
In general, I mean, I feel like we saw the same point probably 7 or 8 times.
And I think the signal has been clearly sent over to World Champions Table Tennis Academy that Lily's back and that she's ready to compete throughout this entire championship.